So what I want to tell you first is the good news, okay? Student athletes have an exceptionally better chance to work in college athletics. I just finished writing a book about the business of college football, and one of the chapters in that book is about how the role of athletic director has changed. And when I was writing that chapter, I did a lot of research on the characteristics that athletic directors have. There was a study from 1994 that was done on all athletic directors in Division 1, 2, and 3. 80% of the athletic directors had been student athletes. I was blown away by that number. I was not a student athlete. I was a cheerleader, and they don't consider us student athletes. So I was sort of blown away that the percentage was that high. There was another study done just last year. It was only on Division I FBS athletic directors, but still 64% of FBS athletic directors were student athletes. And it's not all football. I took a look at the list and I saw the sports that everybody played. There were a couple of golfers, there were a couple of baseball players, there were a lot of football players. And as you know, there are just a few women who are athletic directors at that highest level. I had the opportunity last year to meet the athletic director, excuse me, at Cal, Sandy Barber. She's fantastic. She was actually just quoted in an article earlier this week about sort of the struggles women have getting into athletic director positions. So certainly Google that. I wish I could remember what website it was on, but it was a really fantastic article that I actually still have open on my computer at home to read again when I get home. So you're starting from a good position being a student athlete. On top of that, despite the fact that there are so many people who want to work in sports, my opportunity, the cases that I've seen and the people that I've talked to who hire in athletics, both college and professional sports, is that not everyone who wants to work in sports is willing to actually do the work to work in sports. So I thought I'd give you an example with my interns from this past summer. I hired 17 interns this past summer, just for little old me. I was trying to finish my 2 books. I hired some interns specifically for each book. I hired interns for a website that I founded and still run, businessofcollegesports.com. I don't have any interns at ESPN, but I needed people to help me with some of my other work. And my experience with interns has been that they don't all work out. So I knew I was overhiring, but I figured I'd be okay. So I just wanted to give you the quick stats on what happened with my 17. I'm not going to give any detailed information about who they are or where they are. 17 of them. One was a high school student. Now, I said you had to be a college student to apply, but one high school student applied, and she blew me away with her experience. I needed somebody that knew Excel really well, and she sent me these Excel spreadsheets that did things I had no idea how to do, and I thought I was pretty good with Excel. So I ended up hiring the high school student. So lesson number 1 is sometimes even if you don't meet the job qualifications, apply anyway. Maybe you've got something else that they're looking for. It's always worth a try. So I hired a high school student when I had no intention of doing so. I had 3 college students, 6 grad students, and 7 law students. I was most shocked by the fact that what I considered my highest level interns, my law students, were my worst interns. And actually my experience this summer, and I've talked to a couple of ADs I've seen recently about this, and they say they run into the same thing. If I took my 17 and I broke it down into who worked out for me, out of 17, I have 3 I would ever work with again. And I'm not that tough. I'm really not. I think that makes me sound like I'm ruthless, but let me tell you why there's only 3 of them. There were 3 or 4, so we have 3 superstars who did above and beyond, and I'll sort of explain to you why they stood out. I had 3 or 4 who did exactly what they were asked. What they turned in was good. They were competent. They did exactly what they asked. They didn't ask for anything more. They didn't do anything more. And that's fine, but when there's other people in the group who are doing more and who are going above and beyond, those are the ones I'm gonna stick my neck out for when they want me to give a recommendation or they wanna come back and work more. I had 2 who never completed their first assignment. One of those was one of my law students and one was a grad student. Now, my assumption is they probably found something else for the summer, and that's fine. I had an intern who came back to me and told me she got an internship with the Clippers, and she felt bad because she had already accepted mine, and I said, please go work for the Clippers. I do not think that my internship is at the same level as a Clippers internship, so I appreciated that she told me. She went on, she kept in touch with me all summer. It sounds like she did great there. I think these 2 that I never heard from again probably found something else shoot me an email. Just let me know that you found something else. I had 8 who did their first assignment but never asked for anything else and never accepted any future assignments. I sort of had a process where I would send out an email to several of them at a time if I wasn't sure exactly who I wanted to work on something, and I would basically just say, whoever responded first would get it. And I had 8 who did that first assignment, never responded for another assignment, never asked me for another one. So that was it. I sort of let those people go on their merry way. So that's my 17. That was how it all broke down. My 3 superstars, I have one who stands out more than the other 2. She was phenomenal. And I was thinking on my way here yesterday, what is it about her that stands out? Because I want to be able to tell you why out of 17, she is the one I hired for a paid internship this fall. And I have never paid an intern ever. I've done a lot of class credit, but I have never had the financial resources to pay someone. And I actually still don't have them, but I like her so much, I'm going to find a way to make it work. So I thought about what she did. When I first hired her, I hired everybody basically over email. I've also learned my lesson with that, and I'm now doing phone interviews. But last summer, I hired everybody over email. Everyone was working remotely. This intern was the only one, and actually she's given me permission to use her name, so I'll start referring to her by her name. Her name is Lauren. Lauren is the only intern who asked to have a phone call with me. She called, she talked to me about what she wants to do in the future, so now I have a really clear idea of what she wants to do. And if I see a job opening, you better bet I'm gonna recommend her, and I'm gonna call somebody if I know them, because I know how great she is after this summer. Now, I don't wanna lose her, but I want her to have a great future, and if I see something for her, I'm gonna help her get it. And we talked more about the internship. It wasn't a long phone call, but she's the only one who asked to talk to me on the phone, or who really talked to me at all about her future aspirations. She did every assignment I gave her. She did them well. She constantly asked for new ones. She would follow up with me, because sometimes I get so busy it's hard for me to even delegate, especially this summer. I was on a deadline for both of my books right at the end of the summer. I was moving. My fiance got a new job. We had to move. We had to sell the house. The entire summer was crazy, and there were times I couldn't delegate. And she would follow up with me like once a week. She wasn't bugging me, but she would follow up and say, I know you said you were too busy last week. I still have some time. Let me know if you have anything. And sometimes the timing was just right, and I could shoot her something really quick. Well, I started sending her more and more stuff, and she kept doing more and more. Then I found out she had another internship. She was taking summer classes, and she was going to Hong Kong on a study abroad for 2 weeks. I would have never known that, because she was doing so much work for me. I have no idea how she was juggling all those balls, but she was. Very professional every time I talked to her. It has been a great experience. And she ended up doing some writing for my Business to College Sports website, and she's actually going to come on with the website this fall. And like I said, I've offered her a paid position because I was so terrified of losing her, because she made my life so much easier this summer. She took so much burden off of me this summer, and I didn't feel that way about any of my other interns. I had ones who did good work, but she is the one I felt like I couldn't live without at the end of the summer. And I've talked to several people about this, and numerous people in college athletics and pro athletics have told me that they have had an intern who was so good they couldn't bear to let them go, and they created a position for them that didn't even exist. So my sort of general advice is to be willing to start at the bottom, be willing to work for free. I can't tell you how many students email me after they graduate, or people email me after they've been out in the workforce for 3 or 4 years doing something else. I get a lot, for whatever reason, from people who've been real estate agents, I guess because they're looking for jobs, but it's just interesting to me that so many people who are real estate agents want to work in sports. I've had an accountant, I've had a carpet salesman, and they want to know, how can they get a job in sports? And I say, well, did you ever do an internship in sports? And they say no. And I'm like, well, you probably need to go find an internship. And they don't want to hear that, because they're already working a full-time job. They've gotten used to making money. They don't think they have the time to do unpaid work. But I think you have to. I think there are very few circumstances where you can get in not having ever had an internship in sports, unless you've been out so long and have such a specialty in an area that you're able to come in that way. A comment I often get that I find humorous is people think I made this jump from law to working for ESPN. Like, ESPN just called me up at my office one day and said, we heard you're a really great lawyer and we hear you love sports. You can come write for us and we'll pay you. And that's not how it happened. I got a book deal. I had written an article while I was in law school about collective bargaining in baseball. I was taking a tax class. I didn't want to write about the tax code. I found a way to make it correlate to baseball because I love baseball. And long story short, a publisher ended up seeing the article. They asked me to turn it into a book. So I'm reading Forbes one day. They have a sports business section, and there's an article in there about baseball's collective bargaining agreement, and there was something in there that was wrong. Actually, there was a video that was embedded. I watched the video. Something they said in the video was wrong. So I emailed the editor and I just said, this is who I am. At that point, I was a first-year attorney, but I'm doing all this work on baseball's collective bargaining agreement. I've written this article, now I'm writing this book. You know, you said this, but I just wrote a chapter on this the other day, and this is how it works. And I said I respected his work. You know, I was much more eloquent than I'm being now. And he emailed me back 2 days later and asked, did I want to write for Sports Money on Forbes? It didn't pay, and I did it for 2 years. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to keep doing it. So I shot an email to Comcast Sports Southeast, which is based in Atlanta, and I said, hey, you know, you guys used to have a sports business reporter on air with you, and I don't ever see him anymore. He was an older gentleman that was a lawyer. And I said, you know, if you ever need anybody for a story, I live here in Atlanta. This is who I am. I'm writing this book. I write for Forbes. And they ended up calling me a couple of days later, and I ended up getting a weekly segment on their show talking about sort of the intersection of law and sports and about sports business. Again, unpaid. And the more I was doing that stuff on the side for 2 years, unpaid, the more I thought, there's gotta be a job that will pay me to do this. And I had sort of a chance meeting with an agent on Twitter, where I also met my fiance. Everybody should be on Twitter. It is amazing the people you can meet on Twitter. And I met an agent, and he said he wouldn't sign me because he didn't know that there were really any sports business jobs out there, but if he ever saw anything, he'd let me know. I went on my merry way, continuing to do what I was doing, but I knew I couldn't keep up that pace forever. I knew I could not be a full-time attorney, write for Forbes, write and do TV work for Comcast, and then I started a blog called businessofcollegesports.com where I was also writing, and I just knew I couldn't keep up that pace. And I thought, please let a paying job come along before I screw this up. And I was lucky that my agent was at ESPN one day. He mentioned my name. The story's much longer than this, but the head of ESPN.com recognized my name because ESPN writers had been linking to my Business of College Sports blog. And he asked if I wanted to come up there and meet. He didn't say we were interviewing. There was no open position. And I just thought we were going to go. We were going to meet. It was going to be a great networking opportunity. I would keep in touch with him. Maybe in 5 years, ESPN would call me one day. And I went up there and I spent the entire day talking to people, and I got the job. So that was about a year ago, and gave up my law practice, and now I do work full-time in sports media and make money doing it. But that's the piece of the story I think so many people miss. They think I practiced law and then I just went to ESPN one day, and it's just not like that. Very few people I've met who work in sports didn't work an unpaid internship somewhere along the way. There's a lot of people who want to work in sports, but when you get down to the people who do the internships, do a good job while they're there, meet people, whether it's meeting people at your internships or meeting people at conferences like this, and keep in touch with them, I think the pool starts getting a lot smaller. And if you're willing to do those things, there's no reason why you can't work in sports.